Obamacare may be encouraging the abuse of powerful painkillers. UNESCO tries to whitewash Jewish history on the Temple Mount, and everything bad in the world is the fault of Christians. This is SkyWatch TV for Wednesday, April 20th, 2016. I'm Derek Gilbert. First up, President Obama is in Riyadh visiting with King Salman of Saudi Arabia. They're expected to discuss the fight against ISIS, but probably not on the agenda, the bill in Congress that would remove diplomatic immunity from countries shown to be culpable for terror attacks inside the U.S. If it passes, the bill could open Saudi Arabia to lawsuits from survivors and families of victims of 9/11. King Salman has said his country would dump hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. assets if the bill passes. President Obama has shown which side he's on, says he will veto the bill if it passes. And the Obama administration is trying to keep some additional secrets, a pile of documents related to financial policy, about 11,000 pages that appear to be a history of the government's seizure of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Now, Fannie and Freddie were created as so-called GSEs, government-sponsored entities, quasi-governmental agencies that were tasked with keeping credit flowing in mortgage markets. But in the years before the real estate crash back in 2007, instead of acting as the insurance agencies for Federal Housing Authority loans, administrators began making very aggressive business decisions to drive up earnings because their bonuses were tied to earnings growth. But the real problem was after the government took over the agencies in September of 2008. They were used as a sort of garbage dump for Wall Street. Fannie and Freddie began buying up toxic mortgages that the big banks on Wall Street wanted to get rid of after the subprime mortgage collapse. They were buying about $40 billion a month during the peak of this program. In total, they borrowed about $187 billion to help bail out the banks. But by 2012, the real estate market had improved again, and Fannie and Freddie were once again making money, a lot of money, to the point they'd actually become a cash cow for the government. So the Obama administration, instead of sticking with the original deal, which was that the government would take an 80% stake in Fannie and Freddie in return for 10% dividend payout, the government decided it wanted a 100% dividend, all of the money. In spite of the fact that Fannie and Freddie then thus paid the government $228 billion, or $40 billion more than it borrowed, none of that money went to pay off the debt. Fannie and Freddie have been turned into a very profitable and highly irregular source of income for the federal government. And meanwhile, behind the scenes, government officials have been working with Wall Street lobbyists to put together a plan for a consortium of private banks to step in and take over the roles of Fannie and Freddie. Now think about that. The banks that caused the subprime mortgage crisis, which nearly wrecked the global economy 8 years ago, is about to be put back in charge of the housing market that they themselves nearly destroyed. So back to the point, what is in this pile of documents that the Obama administration is defending in court its right to keep secret? We don't know. They're secret. But you can bet that it's not good news for you or me. And while we're talking about the government taking over big chunks of the American economy, Obamacare, which is on track to become the largest contributor to gross domestic product before the end of this year, surpassing even what we spend on housing, which makes no sense at all. The largest private health insurance company in America, United Healthcare, has announced earlier this week that it is withdrawing from most of the state exchanges required by Obamacare by 2017. It'll remain only in a handful of states. This means 800,000 people will have to find other insurance. It is a blow to Obamacare, which is on track, as I said, to become the single largest expenditure by U.S. citizens before the end of this year. And with the recent mergers of the insurance companies Aetna and Humana and Cigna and Anthem, the major players in the market now are down from 5 to 3, the other being Blue Cross Blue Shield, which, of course, fewer choices means higher premiums. And as Obamacare is proving itself to be the law of unintended consequences, it is apparently leading to an increase in the prescription and use of powerful painkillers. An Obamacare initiative intended to reward quality care may be increasing the number of Americans addicted to opioids. See, patients are asked under Obamacare to rate their satisfaction with their health care. And then the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services are tying reimbursements to hospitals in part to how well they score on these surveys. The problem is that other studies have shown that patients who rate themselves as happiest with their health care are the ones who tend to spend the most on prescription drugs and have the highest mortality rates. So in other words, patients who want powerful painkillers like opioids and don't get them could cost their health providers a lot of money, which provides an incentive for those health providers to write prescriptions for powerful painkillers when they may not be the best course of treatment. And bear in mind that the number of fatal prescription opioid overdoses in the United States has quadrupled in the last 15 years. Now, you have to forgive me for this next story. I try not to spend too much time pointing out the hypocrisy of progressives because it's a target-rich environment, and we could spend a lot of time each day beating a horse that, if it isn't dead, is at least on life support. But this one is too bizarre. Last weekend in Philadelphia, a conference was held called the White Privilege Conference, a conference dedicated to educating attendees on how white people have an unfair advantage. Well, one social justice warrior went to Twitter and tweeted that although the keynote speech was excellent, it was another example of white privilege because the keynote speaker, a white male, overran his allotted time. Well, the speaker took issue with that and pointed out that he was told he had 60 minutes to speak and only took 53 minutes. Well, the social justice warrior responded by saying that his tweet was an example of a white man's defensiveness instead of taking responsibility. I don't have enough hands for the size of that facepalm. Another speaker at that white privilege conference blamed all the bad in the world on Christians. And as I've said before, we probably ought to get used to this kind of treatment. The speaker said the Christian hegemony lies at the heart, a center of a web of evil that includes racism, sexism, and ableism. Wars in the Middle East are a byproduct of our missionary drive to spread Western ideas and influence. And he's partly right about that, Western ideas and influence, but they really have more to do with oil than the gospel of Jesus Christ. And he blames global warming on the fact that Christians are taught to worship God, the Creator, instead of earth, and treat the earth as sacred. Now, this just illustrates what Brian Godawa and Sheila Zielinski have said on SkyWatchTV recently, that as we move deeper into the 21st century and deeper into a post-Christian America, we're not moving into a new golden age of atheism and enlightened reason. We are moving into an age of pagan earth worship. A tragic story in Texas. Mother of three was found dead inside a church early Monday. Police are looking for a suspect caught on security cameras wearing heavy tactical-style gear. She was found about 5 a.m. Monday at the Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas. Police are investigating whether she interrupted a burglary, but church officials haven't reported anything specific missing. UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, adopted a resolution last Friday criticizing Israel for its actions on the Temple Mount and managed to do so while ignoring Jewish ties to the Temple Mount. It also criticized Israel's activities in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. But in referring to the Temple Mount, which was the focus of the resolution, it referred to the area only as the Al-Aqsa Mosque and Al-Haram al-Sharif, the Arabic names for the Temple Mount. The resolution passed 33-6 with 17 abstentions. The nations voting no to the resolution: the U.S., the U.K., Germany, the Netherlands, Estonia, and Lithuania. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed the resolution as absurd. And an amulet found at the Temple Mount 4 years ago has finally been identified. It was broken, and so the inscription wasn't complete, but scholars have identified it as the name of Pharaoh Thutmose III. This was found 4 years ago by a young girl named Neshama Spielman. She was 8 years old at the time, a volunteer in the Temple Mount Sifting Project, where volunteers literally sift through tons of rubble and debris that were removed from the Temple Mount by the Waqf, which is the Islamic organization that oversees maintenance and security on the Temple Mount. Thutmose, who ruled around 1400 BC, give or take, was called the Napoleon of Egypt. He expanded Egypt's influence all the way to the Euphrates River in the north of Syria. The Egyptian Empire basically was at its peak of its power during the reign of Thutmose III. And for 300 years thereafter, the city-states in Canaan, including Jerusalem, which at that time was ruled by the Jebusites, were under the control of Egypt, which is how Thutmose's amulet wound up there. But sadly, in our modern age, the history of Israel continues to be violent, almost as violent as it was back in the day. A bomb on board an empty bus in Jerusalem Monday tore through a bus full of passengers next to it, more than 20 people injured. No group has claimed responsibility, but Hamas, Fatah, and Islamic Jihad all praised the event. A spokesman for Hamas said the bomb attack was the first in a series meant to surprise the enemy, and justified it as a natural response to defiling the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And just remember, this is going to continue because the struggle in the supernatural realm has always been and will always be, until Armageddon, for the control of God's holy mountain, the Temple Mount, Mount Zion. SkyWatch TV is expanding our programming on the interwebs. Both our YouTube channel and Roku have content, interviews, programs that you will not see on network television. Sometimes we get a guest here, the conversation's going so well, we record an extra 1, 2, 3 interviews, and we can't fit all of them into our weekly schedule. So now we are making those available through our SkyWatch TV channels on Roku and YouTube. Interviews with people like Sheila Zielinski, Gary Haven, Chuck Missler. You'll find those online at our YouTube channel and on our Roku channel as well. And if you've got a need for a more portable version of SkyWatch TV, the SkyWatch TV podcast. Now, we updated it this week, and I'll say again that if you've been subscribing to the SkyWatch TV podcast, and we thank you for that, you will need to update your podcatcher, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, or some other podcatcher. We changed the podcast and moved it to Blog Talk Radio. Simplifies our workflow. It also means that your podcatcher is now looking in the wrong place for the updated feed. So log on to skywatchtv.com, look for the link in the top menu bar labeled podcast and all the instructions there for the code you need to update your podcast subscription. Whispering Ponies Ranch is the subject of SkyWatch TV this week. Tom and Nita Horn join us in studio and at the ranch to show you exactly the exciting developments that have taken place out there. This is the ministry that SkyWatch TV supports, and it's what really the reason for what we do here at SkyWatch TV. It is a ministry for children who've been abused and broken, and those miniature horses are the key to unlocking their hearts, their minds, their spirits. Find out what's going on there today, 2:30 p.m. Central Time on the Cornerstone Network Coast to Coast, and again Saturday on the Victory Television Network in Arkansas and around Memphis, and Coast to Coast on the Christian Television Network. Complete listing of dates, times, and stations where you can see SkyWatch TV. You'll find that at skywatchtv.com. Your support is critical to us at SkyWatch TV, but we always like to make sure you know how much we appreciate it. So our gift to you during April for your gift of $20 or more, this Amazing Grace glass block paperweight and an audiobook edition of The Ahriman Gate, Tom and Nita Horn's chilling supernatural thriller. That's our gift to you for your support of $20 or more. To donate, log on to skywatchtv.com/. And you can also support us with just a click of the mouse. Clicking like, share, or subscribe at these places on the web is a great help to us as it shares the message around. And if you're curious about what I'm thinking or writing about, you'll find that information here, my Facebook page, Twitter feed, and website, including my new blog. My email address for your comments and questions, dgilbert@skywatchtv.com. And thank you for a couple of notes that I received about my comments on Monday, comparing the parliamentary elections in Syria to the Republican caucus in Colorado. I was only commenting on the irony of American politicians calling the Syrian elections illegitimate when voters in Colorado and other states where caucuses were held in lieu of a primary election were not even allowed to vote for the candidate. Please do not interpret this as an endorsement of any particular candidate. Just commenting on the the irony. And I should have mentioned that this is true of both parties, because just as Trump supporters were upset by what happened in Colorado, Bernie Sanders supporters have been upset that in many states where he has won a majority of the votes, Hillary Clinton keeps picking up these so-called super delegates. As I said, both Democratic and Republican Party elites showing that they are more than happy to ignore the will of the people in order to select their candidate. And again, ironic that those are the same group of people criticizing the Syrians for holding an illegitimate election where people actually got to vote. Should also mention, today being April 20th, 2016, it was 100 years ago today that the Chicago Cubs played their very first game in Wigman Field, which is now Wrigley Field. In the grand scheme of things, that's nothing important, I know. But I like to think of my more than half century of being a Cubs fan as training for my Christian walk. Because like Christians, we Cub fans are not supposed to enjoy our ultimate reward in this lifetime. Thank you for watching as we keep watch. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV. To celebrate the release of Nita Horn's inspiring new book, No Fences, SkyWatch TV would like you to tell your story, because after all, even if you don't think so, you actually have a story.
Send in your story, and we are going to choose the 10 best, and they'll be published for Christmas release in an anthology of those stories, along with the book that you buy that is actually only $19.95. Am I right on that?
That's correct.
For free. Tom Horn, crazy guy, he's throwing in a journal which on its own, most of these retail for $20 on their own. So this journal is to help you start writing your story. When you buy the book, not only are you going to be enrolled in this and you can send in your story, but you'll get a plastic pony, you'll get a journal of your own, and the proceeds from the book are going to help fund the studio we're building for SkyWatch Women, and Nita Horn is going to be one of our panel members.
The 10 authors who are selected for the anthology, published by Defender Publishing in time for Christmas, will also receive a $500 cash prize.
That'll go a long way at Christmas time, won't it?
Yes, it will. Even if your story is not one of those selected for the anthology, if you've taken the time to write your story, you've left a legacy for your children and for your grandchildren.
Amen to that.
For complete instructions and details on this opportunity, please log on to skywatchtv.com/nofences.